Well, welcome to the Goer Next Step workshop. What we want to do is to have some next steps, some decisions made in our own minds for when we go home. Because we want to make sure that this conference is more than just a place to get a lot of information, to meet other people, to be encouraged. All of those things are good. But we want to step into what is best. And what is best is to have a plan and to begin moving forward in that plan. As has been said, that at times we think that the Lord would like us to go one direction, but if our heart is right and it's not the right direction, He just kind of moves us around, doesn't He? Probably all of us have experienced that in one way or other in our lives. We want to serve the Lord. We want to maximize who He has made us and how He has made us. And so that is one of the reasons why you guys have chosen this workshop. You have felt in your heart that God would have you be a goer. Now, I heard somebody say that maybe I'm not going to go anywhere for 10 years. Well, there's a lot of time there for the Spirit of God to work in you and work through you in other ways. So we're comfortable with those kind of musings. Now, as we were planning for these workshops, each workshop was given something to share. And so I'm going to read part of this for all of us, just so that we are on the same page. We have talked about the next step, what I just explained, how we want to keep moving forward and not remain stationary or even go back a little bit, but our strong desire and purpose in this conference is that every single person attending will leave with a willingness to pursue one of these roles at this time in their life. It may not be their forever role, but it is one that they sense they should step into after this conference. It goes on to say, this is why we have prepared these next step sessions. You are in this one because you feel this is, or may be, the role God has for you now. It may be a long-term role, or it may be one you play for a while, and it will lead into another role in the future. And there's several of us in this room who have lived that out. Several of the agency people have been overseas for years, and then the Lord called them back, but they are still involved in missions. Instead of going as a goer, now they are mobilizing other people to go. So many of us at this conference are already living out what we're talking about. We have seen that quite often God has us in a role that we enjoy and find peace and fulfillment in, but at some point it opens the door for another role, and we sense that it is God's leading. So we step into that role, looking forward to what God may have for us then. Now, Nathan, have we got the pieces of paper that we've...
They're supposed to come, but they were...
Okay. Are you...
I'm just waiting to see if there's anyone else coming in. I can go grab them right now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get those. We have some handouts that we want you to have earlier than later in this time together, because it will help you begin to consolidate some of your thoughts, some of your preliminary thoughts. We also have a few people who are going to briefly share some of their life experience that may pique in you a question or a comment or something you may want to pursue with them further. So we'll have a time of questioning as well. So that will be Pete and Nathan and myself. And Nathan, do you know who else was going to share?
It's just the three of us.
The three of us. Okay, so we have the three of us that will briefly share, giving you just a little bit of some of the aspects of a goer, different aspects, different dimensions of it. And then we can have group discussion or questions about that as well. This is really your time to do some thinking, some praying, some observing and listening as we come to the conclusion of this time together. So we're waiting for some handouts that you will receive. And this one, it looks like this. One side is white, the other is yellow. It's a very fragile combination of paper because one presses into the other and duplicates it. So you want to be respectful of this when you get it, because if you grab it and move it around too much, it'll pull apart. Eventually we will want to pull apart, but not right now. And when you get this, you can see there's your name, your email, phone, your church you go to, your mission leader or pastor, and then the areas of interest. You can go ahead and hand those out, yeah. So you'll check one or more of those depending on where your interest lies. And then the next section is I would like to know more about, and then there's certain aspects here. Missions-related opportunities in my own local church. Pathways course on mission. Now, I need your name again, I'm sorry.
Sandra?
Sandra, you work with Pathways, don't you?
Right.
Yeah. So if you have questions about what Pathways is, Sandra can briefly answer those. And Perspectives is very similar to Pathways, so as you hear one, you can get the idea of the other.
I'm also representing.
Oh, you are. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course you are. Thank you. I appreciate that. My mistake. The Journey Deepens weekend is something that my husband and I do, and we'll be able to share a little bit about that after the ladies have shared. And then Launch Global Committee, Nathan will be representing that for us. Or I would like to learn about multiple groups or short-term missions. So there's a lot of options here for you to check. And we encourage you to, as you prayerfully consider this, we're again handing it out now. So as people share, or if you already know, go ahead and mark it down. Then the intent of this is for you to take one home and to leave one with us so that we can follow up with you. This is an amazing gift that this conference is giving you. People who care, who will follow up, not bug you or haunt you, but be there for you if you'd like that. And if we can pray with you, or if you have questions, we can do that. People in your own church will be there for you as well as you so desire. Any questions about this form up to this point? Okay, good. Well, as mentioned, we have 3 people who would like to share. And then if you have questions about Pathways or Perspectives specifically, we can have these women briefly share on that as well. But Pete, why don't you come up and give us...
Maybe you can start, because I was...
Okay, I understand. I totally understand. Yes. Well, I'd like to share just a little bit with you about when a family goes overseas together. We have 4 kids. And when we went overseas, they were 4 to 11 and 2 in between. So as you can imagine, it was quite an adjustment for our family. And we needed to be able to prepare not only Dawn and myself, but also the 4 kids that we had. So we began that preparation in our home before we left. It seems very logical, doesn't it? But what we did is we took one wall that we had, we put a huge map up. We did that so the kids could go over and touch it and look at it and see where they lived, which was a tiny little place there, and where we were going, which was way down there. So we put a string on it. Now we did that because that's how kids learn. They learn visually, they learn tactily, we know this, and so we wanted to make sure that our kids had an idea how far away we were going. Then we also worked with our local church and made sure that their Sunday school class kept them on the attendance roll. So when at Sunday school at that time anyway, they would have attendance, and they call out the kids' names. And we wanted to make sure that our kids' friends still heard our kids' names so they wouldn't forget them. And we wanted to make sure that our kids carried their friends in their hearts as well. So we did the pictures and all of that. We also began to teach our own kids the art of protecting themselves spiritually. Spiritual warfare is the way it's, and it's done differently for children than it is for adults. But we wanted to make sure that our kids were prepared to, for themselves, have that intuition, a spiritual intuition. So we made up songs for them that had to do with spiritual warfare. For example, put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Ephesians 6:11, man. So things like that. So the Word of God can be started to get into their hearts and minds, so that later on the Spirit of God could pull that out. So those are just a few of the examples of how a family, when there's more, there were 6 of us, could begin to prepare themselves to go overseas. There are other ways too with the food and all that. But if there are more questions about a family going overseas, we can talk about that if there's a reason to do that. But again, this is your time to ask questions that you may have. So Pete, are you ready now for that?
Yes.
Thank you. Now Pete has another experience that he will briefly share as well. Pete, yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself. Right. Here's
So my name is Pete Klein. My family's in the back there. 3 of my 4 kids. My wife Vicki, and we actually just moved back to the U.S. in late 2017. We had lived overseas most of our adult lives. I went over as a single initially to China through Frontiers. Spent a couple years there and I was right out of college. I knew I wanted to go. Just like, I'm going to go. I'm ready, so I thought. Got there and was greatly humbled by the Lord and the world and the enemy. And yet God used it to show me that I needed people. I needed to be sent well. And so I moved back to the States. And I moved to Waco, Texas, got involved with a church called Antioch. It's a church planting movement that was started to send teams out to the nations. And so I got involved there, went through their training program, met my wife as she was on the way out the door to Afghanistan. I let her go briefly and then went and proposed. And she said yes, fortunately, and came back. We got married, and a year later we launched back overseas. And took us to a few different nations, but ultimately landed in the nation of Indonesia, where we spent almost a decade, and got to be a part of God moving in powerful ways, several movements that emerged, one which fizzled out, but one that started to emerge during our last year there, locally led, and is still continuing to thrive. In fact, I just heard on Thursday that the movement just launched out 10 families to new cities. They're just going to go. They feel called, and they're going to go and get jobs in these new cities and contend, and so that new streams would start. But it's amazing what God does. But it didn't start there. It started with just saying, "I'll go, Lord," and then when He says to go, start moving that direction. And so, a couple of things as I was praying through this time. Just want to encourage you with. I meet a lot of, especially young people that are like, "I want to go," but and there's always like. I think this needs to happen, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. They often will list off 3 or 4 conditions that need to be met. And sometimes those conditions actually keep people from stepping into what God has for them. And so if you have conditions, bring them before the Lord and say, Lord, are these your conditions or mine? We just sent out a couple of single guys to the field who are kind of waiting for wives. And they finally are like, I don't think God's telling me to wait for a wife, so I'm going to go. And they launched, and one of them just got married a few days ago, and just got got married on Thursday, I think it was. And the other one is marrying an Indonesian, and he gets married in January. So they're both glad they didn't wait for that condition to be met before they went. So if that's you, if that resonates with anybody, just bring those conditions before the Lord and say, Lord, are these yours or mine? But He's so faithful. He's so good to give us everything we need. And my other encouragement is just make sure you're plugged into a church that is committed to sending you well, because it really matters that you have a church behind you that's really gonna own that process of taking care of you and sending you well. So yeah, is that?
So, any questions for Pete right now? Yes.
When you went out, did you go in a brand new field, or did you work in established ministry there?
So pretty much all the places were fairly unreached, new works. The one in Indonesia, there was a team that had started there from our organization. So they were a number of years in when we joined them, but it was still kind of a pioneering context, and most of the work that we did was in unreached areas. So it was a mixture of both. But
what do you recommend for somebody going out for the first time?
That's a great question. So it really depends on gifting and calling, what you sense. For us, we felt like we wanted to go to a place where nobody's been before. So there's a lot of kind of apostolic desire and ambition. But once we got out there, I realized I didn't have that tip of the spear kind of gifting to break open a new area. It's just, I'm not wired that way. And yet I'm passionate about seeing it happen. And so it took a couple of years. So when we first launched out as a married couple, we were trying to get into Iran. And so that took us, we lived in Afghanistan, we lived in Kuwait. And we just quickly realized we're not those type of, like, I'm going to break new ground myself. I'm going to be the tip of the spear. And we realized we needed to get behind somebody that was like that. And so that really precipitated our move to Indonesia, where there was a team leader who really was gifted in that way. And he was, I like to say, he was great at making messes, and I loved to come behind him. We would come behind him and kind of help create order out of the mess, and so that it's sustainable. And that's what I really realized for me personally my gifting was. So I think, to answer your question, I think a lot of it is gifting and calling. What's the Lord calling you to? Is He calling you to be the point person to go to a new place, or is He calling you to come behind somebody that's already doing that?
Pete brought up a really good point in that he thought he was one kind of person here. And when he got to where the Lord would have him go, he realized that his gifting would be better maximized in a different role. I think that's incredibly important. And that requires a little bit of humility, a little bit of submitting to other people on your team, obviously to the Lord's leading. And that is what makes an excellent team member. That's how we get the job done. When people are willing to lay down who they thought they were or thought what they were going to do and dig in and become part of the team that God is. Go ahead.
And part of it, I think, was, and I love missionary biographies, but I read some missionary biographies that, it was the lone person that went out and this great story emerged. And, you read those, you're like, yeah, I want to be that person. And so I kind of fed myself with that. It's not a bad thing, but that's what the picture I had, and what I realized out in the nations. What's needed is people that will go low, and it will get behind people. And so our greatest joy was getting to pour into and be poured into by Indonesians that we partnered with. It was both ways. It wasn't us giving everything. We received probably more than we gave, but really getting behind them and saying, what is it going to take for them to see their nation reached? And we actually our whole family got to go back to Indonesia this last summer and visit some of the teams we've sent out since we've been here, but also visit the Indonesians that we worked with in Indonesia, and just such a joy to be with them, just to see them flourishing, to see them stewarding this movement that's happening, whether we're there or not. Actually, it's probably better that we're not there, so that it can really, really thrive.
Other questions? Okay, I'd like to ask you, NP, I know my experience, but what was your experience as far as language? How important is it to learn the language? And just open that up for us a little bit.
Yes, yeah. I would say 95% of the time it's incredibly important. The reason I say there's 5% where it's not is I've seen some people that God calls differently to go and, just go in for a brief stint and come out and go in and come out that never learn language. So I want to just leave a little caveat that sometimes that is the case. But if you're going to live in a nation and really invest in people, like take the time to really learn language well, really get it down well. And I always tell our people that we're training, hey, you have a window on the front end. And if you miss that window, it's really hard to come back and learn language after that. I rarely see somebody who wherever they get within the first couple of years, if they really don't get very far, I rarely see somebody come back around at like year 5 or 6 or 7 and go, I really want to get this language thing down now. It really, you have that initial window, and the choices you make in your first term, your first day on the field, the first week on the field, the first month on the field really shape. I like to say it's the trajectory of the rocket ship. Like if you're a little bit off, you trace that out, you can get off course pretty good. And so just giving yourself fully to language in that first term is critical.
Excellent. Okay. Yes.
When you say the people you're training, what organization are you with again?
With Antioch Community Church. So it's a movement of churches that train and send. So it's a church and a mission organization all kind of mixed together.
Okay, Pete, stay close to the front, please. And Nathan, I want you to come up for a little bit as well. What you have here is a family that went 4 to 11. You have another situation here. A single went, came back, and then went with his wife, and you had your children over there, is what I'm understanding?
Yeah, we had 3 of our 4 while we were living overseas.
Okay, so that's another experience that you might want to tap into. Nathan, please come up, and here we have what we call MK, or missionary kids. So why don't you share a little bit of your journey?
Yeah, so they asked me to speak as the TCK, Third Culture Kid. And so I'm here to show you that you don't turn out weird if you don't have
Okay, thank you. That was enough. I really appreciate it.
But I do want to speak to most of you here who will either be parents on the field or have parents that want you to stay home from the field. And the big concern is, can I trust God to take care of my kids? And I mean, you're still asking that, Tim, about your kids as you go. One thing is you always turn your phone off before you come up to speak. So I just had to go off in a wedding I did recently. But I'll
That's
tell you,
not a TCK thing. That's a unique.
yeah, it is. It is. But taking your kids to the field, I have 6 children. My wife and I have 6 children. I wish I had raised them on the field, much rather than raising them as a pastor's kid here in the States. Much rather.
Can you
I mean,
flesh that
after
out
all,
for us?
let me show you. So when I was 3, my parents took me to Africa without ever asking me. And I've been in counseling ever since, trying to get over it. But you just get used to those things. Things that traumatize us here, as a kid who gets to raise in all the world, you grow up, battered around, and I think all of us 5 kids came back pretty healthy from that kind of experience. We went over in a ship. How many of you spent a month on a ship? It was a wonderful trip, wonderful experience. I don't remember any of it, but it was great. But after that, I did many ship rides, and those were heaven on earth, and nobody else got to do that kind of thing. I lived in a house without water or electricity, windmill. I mean, how many of you get to do that? It's great. I killed my own lions for breakfast, and that's not true. I got to go to school where I remember coming home and saying to my mom and dad, they sent me to an English school for a while, and I said, I don't like being there because they're talking Afrikaans or they're talking Zulu. And my parents said, why are they talking Zulu? I said, well, they're teaching us a Zulu song. And my mom said, well, can you sing it for me? I said, yeah. Fire, 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 pour on water, pour on water. How many of you have had experiences like that? I remember sitting in a game reserve, and I was eating a banana, and this monkey came and grabbed it out of my hand. I turned to my mom and I said, that naughty boy just stole my banana. Okay, not funny. It was funny to me. You don't have those experiences. And all of those things are really wonderful for a child. I had to learn another language as a child, and I had to go to... Actually, going to the South African schools turned out to be really good because when I went to college, they sat me down and they gave me one entire year free of college because I'd been... Yeah, they just realized you've gone through so much living overseas that we're going to give you... That was a big grant. So... yeah, and then I got to work in a gold mine. You ever done that? There's just so many things that our kids benefit. So don't feel bad to take your kids with. I think it's easier to raise your kids for Christ in that situation than it is in America right now. So I came back here and became a pastor. I have no idea why I did that. And went to seminary first and got a degree. And then in the process, we started sending a lot of people into the field. And many of them that we sent didn't do very well. They had a hard time. And
okay, let's talk about that for a minute. What was going on there with was it a preparation lack, or what did you as a pastor, what did you discern was going on there, Nathan?
Well, I thought it was a lack of preparation, yes. One of the things that struck me was as I started getting interested in missions here in the valley, was I heard a lot of people talking about going, but I didn't hear much talk about winning. You know, it really struck me as odd that we're all about going, getting people there, short-term, long-term. There was very, very little energy placed into how should we do this so that we win.
You mean win souls?
Win for the kingdom. How we weren't thinking that way. We were thinking get people over there. And then I would go to more mission organizations. I didn't hear much there either. It was all about getting people over there. There wasn't enough about what do we do to bring in the kingdom of God to these people. So that's where TOAG and Launch came from. Was well, we got to start figuring this thing out. I didn't know what I was doing.
Okay, you just mentioned two names. Let's pause here and explain. I think Launch is the one we're focusing on through this particular conference. Take us there for a few minutes.
So it birthed out of our church, trying to train our people to go, because we sent a lot of people long-term to the Muslim world.
What church is that?
Faith Church of the Valley. It was a different church back then. Mm-hmm. But so many of them would go for 2 to 10 years and come back and really feel frustrated by what they'd done. So we said, okay, let's try and train them. And in the process, I got trained. I mean, that's really the truth. I remember going to hear Jimmy and just being blown away by what you guys were doing at Antioch, and realizing I still had so much to learn. So they do a lot of training too.
But focus on Launch right now for us.
Well,
please.
okay. So I got, like you, I am the point of the spear, and I make the messes, and I need somebody to come clean them up. And so Launch came and cleaned up my mess, and it's now running properly, and it's an organization that you can count on working.
And explain what Launch is. What is
a 9 months? try to get you to do here a little bit of what you're going to do over there. So it's not perfect. We call it after hours.
I was just saying it's on here for people that are.
Yes, but I want them to know what it is that they're, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's on
I like that.
Sorry,
Good.
Yeah, we'll tell you more. Jake's email's on there. But in small ways, we're trying to make it like it would be on the field. So you do a lot in community. So right now our interns are learning to wear on each other. And in January, we're going to take them away and teach them how to fight better. And they're already learning how to share the gospel with Muslims. What different ways to do that.
And that's done here in the States in a safe environment so they can debrief.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because why go overseas and try to do it when you've never tried to do it here? So
how long is that program? When if someone commits to
9
launch?
months. Ours is 10. Because
Okay.
we call ours to launch. It's TOEG curriculum in a launch format. So
And where is launch?
right now ours is in Tempe in Jake's home.
Okay, so that's local for those of you who the Spirit may be going, hey, maybe that launch thing is something I want you to
Stay
do.
in your job. Stay in school. Stay a parent if you're raising kids. We don't want you to leave your family. But we'll train you after hours to hopefully go and try and win rather than just go.
Okay, let's pause there for a minute, Nathan. Now let's pick up Antioch. Share what, come over here where the microphone is, please, and share a little bit about. First of all, is there an Antioch church here?
There is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're at Ray and Dobson.
Okay.
Yeah, Antioch, very similar to what Nathan was sharing in that it's not enough to just send people. Like, going is just the beginning. We want to see the nations reached. And I think what we have seen, so Antioch, I think, for many years erred on the side of focusing almost exclusively on character and those things, which if you're going to err on one side, that's probably the side to err on. But also we had a lot of people out in the nations that were full of character, but that weren't seeing the fruit that we were believing for. And so really, Lord,
So it's through a local church.
it's a local church.
Okay, take us from there,
Yeah,
please.
and so it's the local church really owning the sending process, saying, hey, we want to mobilize the full resources of the church to see the nations reached, and the people that go are kind of if you think of a rocket ship going into space, you get astronauts get all the they're the well-known people, but there's for the 3 or 4 people that are going up in the ship, there is a multitude of people that are helping make that happen. And so that's kind of the premise behind Antioch. Like, what if we mobilize the full resources of the church, people resources and giftings and callings to really try to do this well?
So what I'm understanding is that a church is mobilized to send out. Is that what? That's what I'm hearing.
So Antioch is a church, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's a local church
Okay.
that trains and sends and supports them as they're out.
Okay, so we have 2 examples here of somebody who wants to go, and in order to be more effective in the make disciples part of the command. Because the go is in order to get us there, in order to make disciples. So that's the part these men are focusing on now. And that's the role of the local church, which we're hearing in different venues in different ways. Let's pick up just real quickly. Give me your first name. I'm sorry. Is it Judy, Jill? Joyce. I knew it was a J.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay, stand up and just right where you are. Well, come up here so we can get you recorded. And I want to hear. So, are you, as people who are on the brink of considering going, hearing the options now start to formulate for you? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I am the perspectives. You heard a little bit about perspectives today. I'm the area team leader here in the Phoenix Valley. I know Pathways and us have worked together in the past, and Perspectives is starting to have some new classes formed here in the Valley. We have 2 coming up actually in the new year. There's going to be one held at Scottsdale Bible Church. It's beginning January 8th, and there's going to be one held in Tempe January 13th, I think it is, on a Thursday evenings. The Sunday, with the one in Scottsdale will be on a Sunday afternoon, and the one in Tempe will be on a Thursday evening.
Now, Joyce, tell us, what is the advantage for a person who feels
Yes.
the Lord is sending them? Why would they go to a class like that?
So the thought behind that is, way back in the very beginning in Genesis, in the Bible, God said to Abraham, I'm going to make of you a great nation. And God keeps his promises, doesn't he? And I'm also a missionary. I'm with Ethnos 360. And so at that point, as I had served overseas, I had been a missionary, and I thought, what more is there to missions? How? I'm a missionary. I know it all, right? I'm seasoned. I know it all. When I took the Perspectives course, and I realized, God said way back in Genesis, I will make of you a great nation. I thought, that is awesome. I remember reading that verse, and look what God is doing. But you know what? God didn't just drop the ball with Abraham and then pick it up when William Carey showed up on the scene. That is not how God works. God continued to work all throughout history. Peoples all across the world where God's word was being hidden in sacks, carried from country to country, and how God's word was being preserved. And so the course of Perspectives, it takes you through 15 lessons. It helps us to understand the biblical aspect of it. God's word is solid. It's true. He wants us to build that as our foundation. Historical, he's brought that through the many, many trials and toils of people and men and women over the years. Yes, men and women, like William Carey and John Calvin and all those. But you know what? He's given us that aspect of, now this word needs to go out into the nations of the world, the cultural aspects of, as you were talking about. But here again, then we come to the strategic part of this. Is there a part for me? What can I do to be part of this, carrying this good news to the nations of the world? So it comes full circle. The 15 weeks comes full circle. When we get to the end of that, you're kind of saying, what part do I play? Where are my gifts? How does God want me to be part of this plan that he's already said way back there he's going to fulfill his promise? So that's what Perspectives does.
Okay, it gives you a perspective. Yeah, it's very good that way. We're going to be hearing from you in just a moment, but in between I want to share a little bit about the Journey Deepens, which is a weekend retreat. And guys, don't go too far away because we want you here.
What's your name?
My name is Ellie Carrot, and my husband Don and I give weekend retreats for people just like you who are on the cusp of knowing there's a change coming in your life, but you're really not sure. You're wondering about your kids. You're wondering about your education. You're wondering about how it will be when you're over there. What are you going to do? And so the Journey Deepens is just that. It gives you a chance to sit in a small group with other like-hearted people who are there to give you the opportunity to grapple with some of these things in even smaller groups. And people like Pete and his wife and Nathan and Joyce and some of these people who have had life experience are there as coaches who will sit with you in your small group as you're working through stuff, pray with you, cry with you, argue with you, be there for you. And we also have agencies come to that who you can speak with. We have one-on-one times with any of the coaches or Dawn and myself if you feel that there are some things you want to work through personally as an individual or as couples. Then that is what the Journey Deepens is designed to do. At the end of that, you leave with 3 action points that you have come up with between you and the Holy Spirit. And how that is basically done is after each session, we give a half an hour for just you and the Holy Spirit to think about, to pray about, to cry over, to argue with him, however you want to do that. Write stuff down, and it's really quite a process because the Spirit begins distilling things in your mind and heart. And each session, that those thoughts, those emotions, whatever it is, become more clear to you. And by the end of the time, you're able to write those 3 action points with dates. The reason we do that is just to encourage you to keep moving. We do something similar here. You write it down. In 3 months after you attend, we send you your action points in your handwriting, and we follow up with you saying, how's it going? How can we encourage you? Where have you been discouraged? It was very interesting for Donna and myself. We were able to give some workshops here. At the first workshop, this woman walked up and she goes, "Remember me?" I'm going, "No, I don't." I wish I did, but she was very gracious. And she said, "Well, I attended the Journey Deepens about 4 years ago, and I have my action steps." And she brought them up and showed them to me. I thought, wow. And she said, "And I'm with a mission group, and I'm doing exactly what I felt the Lord would have me do 4 years ago." This woman was floating. She was floating. And I was kind of beeping up there myself, thinking, well, praise God. Thank you, Jesus. Because it's one thing to have good intentions. It's another thing to discipline ourselves and begin writing those down, praying them through, gutting it out, talking with other people, listening, going to different opportunities, and getting there. Okay? Because what we don't, the largest tragedy would be for us 10 years from now to come back and we're still kind of wondering what we're doing and where we're going. And, so we need to be men and women of action and of moving forward. And as we have said, it's okay if we're not going the exact way. The Spirit, if our heart is right, the Spirit just goes, good idea, Ellie, but I want you really over here. So let's just do this. And the Lord will do it. The Spirit will do it. Okay, let's come and hear from you, please. And then we'll have a few minutes for questions.
I'm Sandra Bauer, and we are with Pathways for Global Understanding. And it's very similar to Perspectives, that you go through God's heart for the nations that are revealed in the Old Testament and the New Testament, and then a couple lessons on the history of missions, which is exciting to see God's movement. Then it goes into cultural understanding and strategies for reaching the nations and partnership. So we have a 12-week course that has about 30 pages that you read each week, and you do questions and a major project on the unreached people groups and a lot of interactions with other ministries that are local and international. We find that a lot of people aren't able to make that commitment at that level at 3 hours session. And so we ended up doing a video series also. And they're kind of TED Talks that we asked people from different agencies to do a concise talking on those points. So they still are going over, God's heart for the nations, but doing it more concisely. So they're about 30 minutes long. And we're finding that people are able to use those in their Sunday school classrooms, at home groups, and young people gatherings and everything. So they can watch the video, and then they can have discussion points, and there's activities and everything included. And those can be downloaded from pathwaysglobal.org, and they are free, or you can also order a thumb drive for that. And so that's what we're making available and being there to support people. And we'd love for you to be a part of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Any questions regarding, yes?
Can we get the workbook from you today during the conference?
We are not supposed to sell things here at the conference, but they can be ordered on Amazon too.
Okay. Well, we're getting, our time is coming to an end, but Nathan, I want you to come up and talk a little bit about short-term missions.
Well, yeah, I can. Let's not think of short-term as missions.
Explain that, please.
How much do you think you can really accomplish in 2 weeks? Short-term is exposing us. It's good for us to get that experience. It gives us a chance. I'm going on a short-term trip in 2 weeks. but, oh no, 3 weeks, but I'm going with the intention of going long term. And I think we've got to change this paradigm. The trouble is we're spending amazing amounts of money and manpower going for 2 weeks, overemphasizing what we think we can do in 2 weeks and forgetting what we can do if we go for 10 years to life. That's my mantra. So is it Grace? Is that your name? No. Yeah.
Esther.
Esther. It had one letter in there, right? Esther.
You're doing
Esther,
better than I
I
am.
just am pleading, think 10 years to life. Because most things don't happen quickly. Yours is the only group, when I was in Indonesia 5 years ago with our foundation, we met with 5 different movements that were really multiplying fast. And then one of them was Antioch was part. It wasn't you, was it? Did I meet you in ETSI?
We were there. I don't know if we met.
Yeah, I don't know if we met either. But
Do you want to meet now? Just to clear
well,
it up?
I wasn't sure if anybody on your team had been there 20 years, but all the others had somebody on the team who'd been there 20 years. But the fruit they were seeing, because they invested that time, was phenomenal.
Well, point well made. Do you want to speak to that at all, short term?
Yeah, so short term, I mean, I'm definitely in agreement. Going short term, just thinking I'm just going to do my short term thing, and then that's it. It misses the mark. I think for short term, when done in view of long term, can be a really powerful thing. So we, kind of similar to what Launch does, we use short term trips and then like short term internships to really simulate that same thing. Hey, go and serve under a long term team for 3 months. And see if it still is an exciting thing to, if you've lost the itch to do missions, after 3 months, then it can be a helpful tool for people to really say, hey, am I really called to this? Was it just something I, had for breakfast or felt it at the last session of a missions conference, or is this really God? This is what I'm doing with my life. And so if it's done well, I think it can yield long-term laborers. So for our church, it's a big part of our strategy, but it's done in light of, hey, we're not just doing short-term trips to do short-term trips. We're doing them because we want to see long-term laborers.
Okay, so it's part of something bigger.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And as one who has received short-term teams, it's a lot of work for those of us on the field, and it takes a lot of our time and effort, which we're happy to do. But these men have spoken to the core issue that we want to see longevity. We want to see lasting fruit, and not people who do China and then they do another country and that kind of mentality. Has this evoked any questions or comments from you?
I have a question,
Yes.
a comment.
Mm-hmm.
In consideration of short term, try to fit farming into short term and get a harvest from it.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the examples from Scripture, isn't it? Consider the, yeah. Good
So
point.
since you spoke, this is a good time for me to segue into my last point, which
Okay.
missions is also for old duffers.
Example.
So
Wait a minute.
I'm 46, and but Tim is 61, and he's going over. And I actually think Tim will be far more effective than most 21-year-olds.
Explain that.
So I'm going to Saudi Arabia because some crazy people think that because I don't have any hair and what I have is gray, they're going to listen to me more than anybody else. And it's true. I have an audience just because of my age. In fact, if we're really going to mobilize and catalyze the proximate church to do it, the people to send are like Tim. They're not likely to listen to me when I'm 26 and wet behind the ears, and I've got lots of ideas, but they're not field tested, and I don't merit the respect that I should have. So I'm calling it two-timers. I'm trying to get people to be two-timers, where either you've done missions before and now you take off a stint to take a while and then go back for probably your most fruitful years, or you've got one job, and then after a while you realize, I'm going to stop running the city of Tempe like Tim, and I'm going to go and run the world. And so Tim's going to go to Egypt. And I would love to see missions refocus and not just send young people.
Yeah. How are we doing on our papers, people? Getting them done? Are there questions about these?
I want to add on, but even if you are a young person,
Hang in there. You'll get old
you just
too.
got your, I could wait 30 years to go. I remember we would, in Indonesia, we would try to mobilize the local church, which was very insular and didn't reach out much, and so we would train them to go out and share, and had these 3 retirees that came to be trained. They were Indonesians. They're like, we're in a dead Dutch Reformed church, and we want to learn how to share about Jesus with Muslims. And so we started taking them out and training them. And I was shocked because we'd model it, we go out and show how we do it, how we engage people. They got so much more respect from people when they try to just share them than I did. I was like, so the whole thing about having gray hair in the nations, it's awesome.
Micah.
God, great.
Excellent.
Would you be able to share your opinion if your view is go unless God tells you to stay, or stay here unless God tells you to go specifically? Would you be able to share which one you feel closer to?
Maybe
I'm not trying to catch you.
no, maybe D, none of the above. I think if you're walking intimately with Jesus and willing to obey and willing to go if He says go, you're going to go. I will say, there's some people that feel a clear call to go to a nation, and there's some people that just say, hey, I'm a volunteer. I mean, Isaiah chapter 6 was a volunteer, and God sent him very specifically to share a specific message. So I don't know if there's one right answer to that, but if you're burning to go, then
Sounds
go.
like a PC answer there.
Maybe so.
Thanks.
If you're feeling like you should go, start moving.
Yeah.
What if your church doesn't send missionaries?
Oh.
I mean, we were just going to send ourselves,
Wow.
so that's we figured we're retiring. We've been to this ministry before.
Yeah.
We're just going to go down there and let.
Well, so when I went as a college student, so I was in college. I'd give me a heart for the nations. I was ready to go. I was in a church that hadn't sent missionaries in its 120-year history. So I was like, I'm going to be the first. So I'm going to help this church figure out how to send me. And they did the best they could. It wasn't terrible, but they had no idea what they were doing. And so I think it starts with a conversation with your leadership. Like, hey, this is what's in our heart. Is this something you guys want to be a part of helping us do? Because we need people behind us. We need a church behind us.
So if they say their focus is in another direction, how would you respond? What would you do next?
Like if they wanted to do missionary work in Europe, or say we're going to Latin America. So.
Yeah. I think you just got to get before the Lord and seek counsel. I don't know if there's a quick answer to that, but
I mean, I would just encourage you guys to at least go with an agency. Don't
Definitely.
even think that's an option to go, the two of you on your own. That's not even an option in love. I shared that with you guys.
Yeah.
Not even
Good
an option.
counsel.
So
yeah, I think having you always want to be under covering. I mean, it's a biblical concept that we coming under others and submitting ourselves to others, and so there's so many great organizations out there.
Well, this is spinning off other conversations, which is wonderful. That's the whole reason why we are doing this session. But we do need to bring this particular time to a close. So what we're going to do, I'm going to read a passage, a very short one that I think is appropriate for now. While I'm doing that, please pass your 2 pieces of paper carefully to this end, and Nathan will take those and collect them for us. And while we close, I want to read this. This is from Romans 12:1 and 2. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit in without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Rapidly recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. Well, do I get an amen on that? Isn't that great? That's what we want to be. We want to be able to present ourselves before the Lord and for Him to turn to us and say, well done. You've been good and faithful. You've been a servant. Come on in. Let's enjoy eternity together. So as we close this, if you have other questions for any of us, please get together and we'll talk. We can also continue with these other options that are given you, but we'll close in prayer now. Father God, we are so excited and delighted to be your children. We are privileged beyond belief, not only for eternity, but for a time. And we want to invest our lives well. We're understanding that in order to do that, we need to align ourselves with your plan, your understanding, your focus, your priorities. So we're praying over each of these people who are in their process, that their hearts will be drawn to you in a way that is from you to them, that they will be hungry and thirsty to be in your word, that they will be hungry and thirsty to talk with you often, that they will be hungry and thirsty to walk by faith in you in another dimension, one not seen, that they hear your voice and turn and follow you in obedience. So, Lord, we thank you. We pray protection over this group of people as they're in decision. We pray that they understand how to protect themselves spiritually from the enemy. And, Father, we thank you that we as a unit, as your family, are here to get that great commission done. We thank you that it was started in Genesis 12. And, Lord, we want to be a significant part of it while we have time here on earth. So we praise you, we thank you, we exalt you, and now we submit to your will. We pray these things for your glory and our good. Amen.
Amen.